This podcast is being brought to you by 3 juniors from ERHS, Penny Lee, Xiaoxiao Chen, and Ivy Zhang.
In 1999, there was a murder of a 17-year-old teenage girl, Heyman Lee, who was strangled to death and buried in a park. The culprit seems like her ex-boyfriend, Adnan Syed, but when you look closer at the evidence, there are too many questionable points in them. Sarah Koenig was a journalist who created a podcast that talks about this case and wants to search for the truth, who digs through every piece of evidence and evaluates everything that's related to the case. But there are people who question her ability in reporting, which is something that we're going to talk about today.
We're going to debate whether Sarah Koenig is a reliable reporter or not.
I think Sarah Koenig is somewhat a reliable journalist.
Oh, that's interesting. Why is that?
Because she did provide evidence from all perspectives, and she did get the evidence from the formal sources, so I think that makes her somewhat reliable.
What I think is, even though she get evidence from other sources and she presented pretty well, but in her way to present it, he will add her own opinion or her own feelings to it. For example, in episode 1, when she talks about Adnan Syed, she using describe language adorable, she using describe language like giant brown eyes like a dairy cow, and that makes a positive picture of Adnan Syed to the audience. So that's kind of biased because she will make the audience feel Adnan Syed is now more like a positive character. I think what a journalist should do is to present evidence objectively, without her own feeling, because that's what a journalist do. From what I think, if you are a YouTuber or some influencer, it is okay and it's normal to add your own opinion or your own stand. But as a journalist, I think you should take your stand more objectively. And another reason I think she's more unreliable journalist, because also in episode 1, which is the first impression of the podcast to the audience, she says something could someone looks like that really strangle his girlfriend? And this makes a really positive impression of Adnan to the audience. Sarah Koenig is questioning to the audience and asking the audience if the guy has a giant brown eyes like a dairy cow that could really strangle his girlfriend. She introduced procedural bias into her investigations. This makes Adnan appear more trustworthy and sympathetic than he might objectively. This shapes the personal feelings of the audience towards Adnan.
Because humans are supposed to have emotions, and sometimes it's uncontrollable, so it is reasonable that she includes some of the opinion-wise words, especially talking about such a tragic incidents like this.
Yeah, that's understandable. When I listen to her podcast, my emotion will be touched by how she present the evidence, or how her guest that talks. But as a journalist, she should not contain any emotion in her way to present, because she is a journalist, right? What I think about a journalist is they will present evidence neutrally, without any emotion, without any personal opinion in it, because their audience need the most neutral evidence to think themselves about the things, not what Sarah Koenig wants the audience to think. That's my opinion.
Mm-hmm. But maybe Sarah Koenig think the audience have their own opinion on this and would not be affected by her opinion, so that's why she did include some of the emotions she had about it.
Well, even it's that, but it's like the first episode. Like, if she shows her opinion first episode, like her audience, well, is like being easily to influenced by her. Like whether Anand is innocent or trustworthy, it's really based on how Sarah Koenig presents the evidence. Like this action can impact how listeners interpret later information, like later on Jay's like testimony or other things. Listeners may more inclined to see Anand sympathetically. Her positive portrait of Anand may be maybe little or somehow decrease her like objectivity.
Yeah, I think that also makes sense.
But in other hand, I do agree that the way she presents the evidence, it's neutral. She presents like evidence from both ways. She fact checked whether like Anand is a community golden child that's said by Rabia. She did fact check whether that is true or not, and she did find out the truth that Anand did stole some money, like when he was a high school student. And I think she did a good job on that.
Sarah Koenig's fact-checking is one of the reasons that she is somewhat a reliable journalist. In episode 2, she carefully reviewed all the court record, the police reports, and the phone logs to verify the informations. And this dedication to accuracy shows her commitment to presenting verified facts to the audience rather than assumptions. And by consulting multiple documents and sources, Koenig built trust with her listeners. By having her story on solid evidence and cross-examining claims, she makes her work feel more balanced and reliable. Another thing that she has done well is including different perspectives. She doesn't just stick to one side, she shares input from Jay, Adnan, and Adnan's friend. And this shows that she's trying to give listeners the full picture, not just one version of the story. On top of that, Koenig brings in experts like lawyers and specialists, and this adds weight to what she's saying and proves that she is serious about being accurate. It's not just her opinion, it's backed up by the professionals. But even though the way she presented her evidence makes her somewhat reliable, but sometimes her tone makes her sound biased. For example, the way she talked about Anand can feel a little too sympathetic. While this connection makes the story engaging, it might make her seem too invested in proving he's innocent. This could cause some listeners to question how objective she really is. By showing so much empathy for Adnan, she might unintentionally guide people to see things her way instead of looking at the fact critically.
I think although Sarah Koenig sometimes shows us that her bias and her own prediction, she often used the information from the police and the testimonies from Heyman Lee or Adnan Syed friends to prove that she is a reliable narrator. And Sarah Koenig also shares that the biggest problem with Jay's testimonies is that it's full of inconsistencies. In order to highlight the key weakness in the case against Adnan Syed, by emphasized Jay's frequently changing testimony, Sarah highlighted the lack of reliability to his testimony. And Sarah also includes her impartiality and commitment to uncovering the facts of the case in order to making it clear to the audience that her goal is not to advocate for a particular outcome, but to truly seek the truth. And the statement emphasized her role as a reporter trying to understand the case. Sarah Koenig also shares to viewers that unresolved issues and ambiguities in the case require closer scrutiny. She uses logos to encourage viewers to view the case with an open mind and prompt them to consider alternative explanations.
So yeah, Sarah Koenig also examines Jay's different accounts of events, and she presents them without drawing firm conclusions.
For now, we have a special guest, Lily. We will ask her some questions and she will give us her opinion on this.
Okay, hi guys. My name is Lily. I really appreciate that I could have the chance to be in this conversation with you guys to talk about how this journalist should behave in this podcast.
Okay, Lily. I know we know each other for a long time, right?
Yes.
So, don't be afraid. If you want to against me, just against me. Say whatever you want. Like, if you want to slap on my face, just do it, okay?
Well, yeah, thank you. I appreciate for that. Thank you. Of course.
Let me ask you, like, what I think is a journalist should present evidence to the audience, like, objectively. Like, if a journalist having her own opinion in her, like, whether, like, report or, like, in her podcast, do you think that's ethical, or does that make her, like, more unreliable narrator?
Well, I think it's not just ethical or unethical. Well, it is reasonable that she's going to include her opinions in it because everybody does that. But just but as a journalist, yeah, you're right that it is better to have more evidence-wise instead of opinions. But I don't think it's going to raise to such high level where it reaches the ethical or unethical. I think both are fine, just as long it is in a good range in it. The opinion-wise words are not over too much in their evidence. So as long as she doesn't include too much opinion-wise words in her podcast, then I think it's fine to have some few of it. Yeah.
Like, because this is like a criminal podcast, like if she let the audience feel like the Anna Syed is innocent, maybe some people will take actions, like maybe to really talk to like the court or judges or the prosecutors about this case, like if there's any possibility to give Anna Syed a innocent verdict. So I think it's kind of important to not have personal feelings in her podcast.
Yes, you're right, but I still think it depends on who and how the audience is and how they think. It's not on all of the journalists responsible, but yes, they're both reasonable on the pros and the cons. Yes. As an audience myself, when I hear this tragedy, I do feel very sad and feel that the girl is really innocent. So to me, I think my thoughts and opinions are really easy to follow the person who is having a podcast, which is the journalist. So to my opinions, I think it's better to not have more opinion words, but I think it's still acceptable to have some of it in it. But on the other hand, as a podcast show, it's more of an entertainment show, so it is good to have some emotionals and personal opinions to be included in this in her words, so that they can attract more audience to listen to them and make the audience feel they are in the shoes of it.
Yeah, I agree to that, because it is more like a podcast that need to make money from it, right?
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, that's our special guest. I'm glad she didn't slap on my face.
All right, time to leave. Thank you guys.
Yeah,
Bye.
I really appreciate her.
No problem. Thank you.
But I still think Sarah Koenig is a reliable person most of the time. When someone says, I don't know what the truth is, but I want to know what happened, it usually shows they're in a place of uncertainty, but they're also committed to getting to the bottom of the things. It's like they're admitting, I'm not sure about everything, but I need to understand the facts, no matter what they turn out to be. Thank you for your listening to our podcast. We hope you can think about the reliability of the narrator yourself.
Thanks to our guests for willing to show up in this show, and they will still be here in the next episode.
We're going to talk about the possibility of whether Annan is the true murderer or not in the next episode. So stay tuned.